Larry Kruger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as Tim Kawakami made a nice, put together a pretty nice article in the SF Standard talking a little bit about the 49ers and all the different connections to the winners and losers from the Deebo Samuel trade from the Niners to the Commanders. We'll talk about it next. But first, of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. This show is also, or I should say this video is also sponsored by LearnKeys Upskill Academy, an online learning platform designed to get you job ready in 6 months or less, whether you're interested in IT, cybersecurity, marketing, or another high demand field. They offer over 30 certification programs to help you take the next step in your professional career. They've been in business for 37 years and they've been, really, really doing an amazing job. Over 200,000 students, over 100 graduates placed into paying jobs every year. There's a link in the description. And you can find out more about LearnKey's Upskill Academy. And thanks to LearnKey for sponsoring the Krug Show. All right, let's talk a little bit about Tim Kawakami. Tim wrote an article in the SF Standard about the winners and losers and the different fallout and all the different things we learned from the Deebo Samuel trade. And if you missed it, Deebo Samuel was traded by the 49ers to the Washington Commanders. The Niners got back a 5th-round draft choice. Now, couple of the interesting angles on this thing, guys. One, Tim Kawakami says that he's heard that the 49ers don't think that they need to go overboard in the acquisition of another receiver to replace Deebo Samuel. They don't feel like they need to go above and beyond to replace him. They like their young wide receivers, and they feel they have young wide receivers who are quote unquote ready to do more. So, I kind of disagree. I mean, I think the 49ers have good young receivers, but you're telling me you're going to win a Super Bowl with Jacob Cowing, Ricky Pearsall, and Terique Owens? I mean, think again. Think again. Cowing caught 4 balls last year, as in 1, 2, 3, 4. As in some receivers catch 4 balls on a drive. This guy caught 4 balls for the year for 80 yards. Some guys have 100-yard days. This guy had an 80-yard year. All right, so let's pump the brakes on him. He's 170 pounds. He's weak as hell. We'll find out if he gets stronger. If he gets stronger, then maybe we'll revisit this. Until he gets stronger, save it. As far as Ricky Pearsall had 31 catches for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns receiving. So he didn't light it up either. In fact, he was a total non-factor for about a 5-game stretch. And he came alive with a couple good games late in the year. Now, I do expect Pearsall to take a significant step forward. He's a 1st-round draft choice. It's year 2. There's all the reasons in the world to believe that Ricky will be better in 2025 than he was in 2024. But to say that, you're going to take out Deebo and possibly Deebo and Aiyuk and somehow Cowing, Pearsall, and your other receivers are going to carry you through. I mean, you haven't invested very much in these receivers. I mean, Cowing was a 4th-round pick. Pearsall was a 1st, but that's it. I mean, who else are you talking about? Actually, Tim Kawakami mentions Terique Owens as a receiver they have confidence in. That's awesome, but this guy ran 4.5. He's 6'1". He has a 38.5-inch vertical, but he's raw as hell. This guy's super, super raw. This guy didn't even play football until he was like a senior in high school. He didn't do much in college. His dad is Terrell Owens, and he's got a great physique. But playing wide receiver in the NFL is about more than just a great physique. And this guy's not hardly some world beater. You got 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" receivers. He's 6 foot. He's 6'1". You got guys running 4.3. You got guys running sub 4.3. He ran 4.51. So what are we talking about? He doesn't have the measurables. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the experience, but suddenly he's going to emerge. That's going to be a pretty neat trick. We'll see if he looks good this summer. But it's one thing to say, hey, we feel pretty good about him. It's another thing to say we don't feel we need to get another receiver when we're kissing off Deebo Samuel, who started for you in multiple Super Bowls and had some big years in the NFL. You're going to get rid of Deebo Samuel, or you're going to say, hey, man, we're cool. We've got Cowing, Pearsall, and Terique Owens. Talk about wishful thinking. That is the height of wishful thinking. So, what did we learn from the Deebo trade? And that was that this article was that Tim wrote was all about. One of the things, the Niners sent Deebo to the Commanders. The Commanders are in the NFC. The Niners are in the NFC. The Commanders were in the NFC Championship game last year. So technically, you sent Deebo Samuel to a conference rival for pick number 148. You got a 5th-round pick from a conference rival, and you're taking a $31.5 million dead cap hit in the process to get pick number 148. So, I don't mind the trade because I really think Deebo's kind of cooked as a player. But, man, I think it's a real strong statement from the 49ers. They can say whatever they want about Deebo, but if they really thought, it's Trey Lance all over again. The Trey Lance trade happened, and morons were like, dude, they got screwed. All they got was a 4th-round pick. And yet people who really knew what they're talking about going, they got a 4th-round pick. Dallas was stupid enough to give the Niners a 4th-round pick. The Niners turned that into Malik Mustafa. So, would you trade Trey Lance right now for Malik Mustafa? Yeah, you would. So, we'll see. There'll be a lot of good players there in the 5th round. And, if the Niners pick the right one, it's going to be a good trade. Now, the trade doesn't become official until March 12th, the first day of the new football calendar year, the new football fiscal year, I should say. So it's not actually official yet, but Deebo is going to the Commanders for a 5th-round pick, and the Niners are taking a $31.5 million dead cap hit in the process for sending him away, and they're getting pick number 148. The other thing I thought was kind of interesting is that it really sounds like now, Tim didn't write about this a lot today, but it does sound like John Lynch is willing to trade Brandon Aiyuk for some combination of draft picks and players to escape the contract that they just signed. They just signed Aiyuk to a 4-year, $120 million deal, and he blew up his knee, and now they're looking to get out, and I think they can get out, but they're going to have to get out at a loss. You're not going to get true value. I would think maybe that you might get a smart, a decent young player and maybe a couple day 3 picks. The teams that make the most sense are New England and the Raiders. Why? Because New England and the Raiders both have serious wide receiver deficiencies, and they both have enormous amounts of cap room. And they're probably going to have a hard time attracting anybody to their team because who wants to go play for the Patriots? Who wants to go play for the Raiders? Those teams are losers. Those teams are going to be losers for the next 5 years. So who wants to go there? Nobody. So, it's like we look at these teams and go, why would anybody trade for Brandon Aiyuk after he busted up his knee and he just signed a 4-year, $120 million deal? Because you're the Raiders, you're the Patriots, you have nothing and you got nothing. What are you going to do? You going to draft a guy? Maybe. Have you shown any ability to do that in the past? Not really. So I think even though it seems like, man, you'd have to find a really stupid team willing to give you serious compensation for a broken down Brandon Aiyuk. But you know what? The Raiders and Patriots are pretty bad teams. The Patriots dumped Tom Brady and then dumped Bill Belichick. And then they've already replaced the coach they replaced him with. And now you've got, you've got Vrabel. Was Vrabel an awesome coach? No. You got a GM. I don't know. I think the Raiders and the Patriots are lost. And I would bet almost anything that they're going to be out of the playoff picture for the next 5 years. I'd be shocked if either team made the playoffs in the next 5 years. But I do believe John Lynch, and I do believe that I heard John Lynch say at the Combine that Ayuk's going to be traded, and that Ayuk's going to be traded most likely for draft picks. And I think those are not going to be 1st-round picks, and I don't think they're going to be 2nd-round picks. And we'll see if they're 3rd-round picks. But to me, it's probably a player and multiple day 3 picks, like maybe like a player, a 5th and a 7th, something like that. I don't think it's going to be a high pick, but that's just me. Kawakami also says there was lingering frustration with Deebo's Super Bowl 59 performance. He wasn't good. He had 3 runs for 8 yards, 2.7 a carry. He had 3 catches for 33 yards on 11 targets. But I mean, frustration. He was going up against McDuffie. McDuffie's way better than Deebo. I mean, you should have expected McDuffie was going to shut down Deebo. McDuffie's way better. So I personally, am I frustrated? I'm frustrated that Deebo's not better, but it wasn't like, hey, man, he should have lit up Trent McDuffie. No. Trent McDuffie is one of the best corners in pro football. Deebo is not one of the best receivers in pro football. So be frustrated all you want, but the reality is talent wins, and the better talent wins. And Trent McDuffie on Super Bowl Sunday was the better talent, and he won. Couple other things from the Kawakami article. Clearly, San Francisco was not worried about trading Deebo in conference. We mentioned that. They clearly didn't believe in Deebo's longevity due to his physical style of play and his maybe questionable training habits. He gets out of shape from time to time. This is where I've been talking about this for a while. I don't believe in Deebo's longevity either, because I actually did a deep dive and I looked at almost every high contact receiver or running back that just ran through people and not around people, because that's Deebo's game. He runs through you. He runs through you. He doesn't look to run around you. He's not a great route runner. He doesn't have great hands. He's not a natural ball skills guy. But what he is he's a bull in a china shop, and he will run right through you. But what happens is, and if you do your homework on this, guys who run through you, they're done by 28, 29. For every John Riggins, there's like 20 other guys that, they ran through you and they had a short-lived career. Earl Campbell, Larry Johnson, and others. Look at all the great power backs of the last 30 years. They basically were all done by 28, 29. That's just the way it is. So I agree with the 49ers. I don't believe in Deebo's longevity either, especially since he lets himself get grossly out of shape. Tim also believes that San Francisco will again have interest in Washington defensive tackle Jonathan Allen if the Commanders opt to release him. There was some talk that Jonathan Allen would be part of this package coming back for Deebo, but the Niners said no. Why? Because the Niners their real motivation here was to get younger and cheaper, and Jonathan Allen's got a big contract. Now, if Jonathan Allen gets cut by the Commanders, the Niners will sign him to a way beneath market value deal. But that right there should tell you that little nugget of hey, Jonathan Allen was part of this deal, and the Niners said, no, we don't want Jonathan Allen, when clearly they need a player like Jonathan Allen. What does that tell you? It's all about the money. Jonathan Allen made too much money. Deebo makes too much money. Deebo was traded because he makes too much money. Jonathan Allen was not acquired because he makes too much money. My guess is Brandon Aiyuk's going to get moved because he makes too much money. This is about money. This is about money. Jed's money that the Niners have spent a ton of. Lynch has told us, hey, we're the second in the NFL in spending in our tenure here. Well, Jed's fine with that if you're winning rings, but if you're winning 6 games, guess what? He's pushing back and he wants his money. And I think the Niners have divested themselves of Deebo, and they're likely to divest themselves of Aiyuk to get Jed his money. Tim also believes the Niners are going to check out, a lot of the high-profile defensive ends if they become available. So that's Trey Hendrickson, that's Harold Landry, Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, maybe a couple others we're not even thinking of. But that's interesting. Once again, they're not going to trade for these guys, but if Joey Bosa gets released, he could be here. If Trey Hendrickson is getting released, he could be here. Myles Garrett for sure will not be released. But the Niners sound like they want one of these veteran defensive ends, and they should, because they really do need a top guy opposite Bosa. And I think it's a better defensive tackle draft than a defensive end draft, to be completely honest. Tim says that the Niners will not be in on T. Higgins' free agent pursuits. Higgins was a franchise tag today. Now, the question is, are the Bengals going to do what the Chiefs did with D Ford a few years ago, where they tagged him and they traded him? Tag and trade is an option that the Bengals have. And I think the Bengals will tag and trade T. Higgins. Now, it doesn't mean he's coming to the Niners, but he could be. But Cincinnati, I think, is going to try to tag, and they did tag him, and now they're probably going to wind up tagging him and trading him. Why? Because they need to pay Jamar Chase. You can't pay all these guys. So they're going to choose Jamar Chase over Higgins. They're going to move Higgins. Now, will the Niners be in the mix for Higgins? I don't think so. But that's just a guess. That's just a guess. Tim also said that he doubts the Niners will go wide receiver at number 11. You know, he doesn't think they're going to go with T-Mac, Tetaroa McMillan, or Luther Burden the third, and are more likely to draft an offensive tackle at 11 or a defensive lineman. And I think that makes perfect sense. I think that's right. I don't know if Tim was told that or if that's just his reading of the tea leaves, but whatever. I agree with him. Tim also said he thinks that the Niners could sign a free agent wide receiver and maybe draft one on day 3. Darius Slayton makes some sense. Tutu Atwell, Rondale Moore. I mean, we've talked Elijah Moore. I mean, there's a number of guys that make some sense. Guys who can run would really be a great complement to what the Niners have right now. And as far as drafting a wide receiver, I'll give you 3 that I really like. On most likely day 3, Savion Williams might be a day 2 guy, but Savion Williams from TCU ran 4.48. He's got 10.25-inch hands. He's a kick returner. He's a wildcat quarterback. He's a jack of all trades. He's a Deebo Samuel type player. Doesn't have great ball skills, but man, big, strong, powerful, explosive. And he ran 4.48. That's pretty good. He's probably going to be late 3rd, early 4th round pick. Another guy that I really like, Dante Thornton from the University of Tennessee, ran a 4.30. He's a Baltimore kid, tough guy from Maryland. He averaged almost 22 yards per reception in his career at Tennessee. That's a great number. And then the guy that I saw earlier this year that I absolutely love is Jordan Watkins, the Ole Miss receiver. And a lot of people are like, oh, he doesn't run fast. He doesn't run fast. He ran 4.37. He does run fast. All right. He runs fast enough. 4.37 is cooking. And this guy had 8 catches for 254 yards and 5 touchdowns in a game earlier this year against Arkansas. He is a monster. He is a monster. And then Tim also said that there could be more cost-cutting moves coming. I know ESPN had an article today where they were saying that you may see the 49ers make a number of their defensive linemen cap casualties. They named Leonard Floyd, Yatir Gross-Matos, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Elliott. As far as ESPN is concerned, all those guys could wind up being cap casualties. If that is indeed the case, the Niners are going to have a really hard time next year because you have Nick Bosa, you have Evan Anderson. You don't have a whole lot else. If you cut those guys that I just mentioned there, you make them all cap casualties, you're going to need like 6 or 7 defensive linemen in the draft alone. It's a great defensive line draft. I just can't see the Niners taking 6 or 7 defensive linemen. He said Kyle Juszczyk is likely to be asked to take a second pay cut. How about this? Don't ask him to take a pay cut and just cut him. How about that? That would be a better idea. Because to me, if you got a Pro Bowl fullback and you can't run for a yard on short yardage, it's time to change out your fullback, change out your center, change out your guard. I was talking to Greg Papa yesterday on KMBR. He's like, he's fallen in love with Tyler Booker from Alabama. Booker's a beast. I mean, he doesn't work out well. Who cares? If you have Tyler Booker, you can run the ball in the low red zone. If you don't, like the Niners don't, you're going to struggle. And they can't run the low red zone, and a guy like Booker might be staring him in the face in the second round. It's also interesting. The NFL Network is reporting that the Niners are at least considering, a Brandon Aiyuk trade offers and are looking to get younger and cheaper. And Tim kind of referenced that as well, that younger and cheaper is the route they want to go. So there you go. Tim Kawakami. It's a real good piece. Tim's a great writer, and he has some outstanding reporting, and it's a terrific piece. It's in the SF Standard. I would encourage you guys all to read it. I summarized it there for you, but there's some data in there that I didn't bring to the video, and you can check that out. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to LearnKeys Upskill Academy for sponsoring the Krug Show and our trip to Scottsdale here in the month of March. And there are links in the description to both. And thanks to both for being proud sponsors of the Krug Show. And of course, thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.